Hello, my name is Bill McDonald and welcome to Author Talk. Our author that we're going to focus today is Hunter S. Thompson. Who was Hunter S. Thompson? Well, he was a very accomplished nonfiction writer and self-proclaimed Gonzo journalist, wrote articles for Rolling Stone, which were later compiled into very successful books. Now, his style of writing, which he became known for, is Gonzo Journalism. And what does Gonzo consist of? It's a first-person narrative. A lot of journalism is in the third person. It's manic, and it's has a lot of social satire and social criticism. And it's very high energy. It can be awfully very funny or sharp in criticism. So that's what Hunter S. Thompson became known for. And to give you two examples, one of his Gonzo journalism-esque writing, and then another example of his more reflective and writing. Let me give you first his writing that he wrote about his friend Oscar Zeta Acosta. My attorney had taken off his shirt and poured beer on his chest, ostensibly to facilitate the tanning process. Now, that's an example of his Gonzo writing. But in the same book, which is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, he wrote about his experience in San Francisco in 1965, even though he was looking back at this in 1970. And it later was termed The Wave, and it goes somewhat like this. Strange memories on this nervous night in Las Vegas. 5 years, 6, it seems a lifetime, or at least a main era. The kind of peak that never comes again. San Francisco in the middle 60s was a very special time and place to be a part of. Maybe it meant something, maybe not in the long run, but no explanation, no mix of words or music or memories can touch that sense of knowing that you were there and alive in the corner of the world, whatever it meant. It was a universal sense that whatever we were doing was right, that we were winning, and that, I think, was the handle. That sense of inevitable victory over the forces of old and evil. Not in any mean or military sense. We didn't need that. Our energies would simply prevail. There was no point in fighting on our side or theirs. We had all the momentum. We were riding the crest of a high and beautiful wave. And now, less than 5 years later, you can climb up any steep hill in Las Vegas and look west. And with the right kind of eyes, you can almost see the high water mark, the point where the wave hit and finally broke off. So that would be an example more of his contemplative and reflective writing. How did the Gonzo style start? Well, that was actually by accident. Hunter Thompson had come off of a very successful book in the mid-60s on the Hells Angels. And so he started getting a lot of plum writing assignments for magazines. But one thing that Hunter did and continued to do throughout his career was to kind of fudge the deadline or extend his deadline so he could get more comped meals, more hotel nights on his retainer, and for the freebies that he enjoyed. And also, I think he liked to wait to the last minute to compose his pieces. So at this point, his editor just demanded that Hunter submit what he had. And Hunter said, well, I only have these internal meanderings, these internal thoughts, these impressions that I have. They're not necessarily coherent, but they are some sort of rambling narrative. And the editor for Scanlan said, look, Hunter, we need the piece, just send it. And so Hunter did, and the editor ended up loving it and said to Hunter that he should write like that all the time. And that kind of became the Gonzo style. So that's kind of how that originated out of, and then that article was entitled The Kentucky Derby is Decadent and Depraved, and that was around 1970, and that really kind of submitted and cemented Hunter as this kind of off-the-wall but very unique journalist, and Rolling Stone started using him a lot, and that's how he really became famous. So Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas was his first big book that was successful, and a lot of the material came from the articles that he wrote for Rolling Stone, where he and his friend, who was an attorney and writer and leader of the Chicano movement, Oscar Zeta Acosta, they took off for Las Vegas in a substance-fueled journey, also searching and dissecting the American dream along the way. Now, Oscar Zeta Acosta was an interesting character as well, and he referred to Acosta as God's own prototype, not suited for mass production. Too weird to live, but too rare to die, was the way that Hunter described his friend and simpatico, Oscar Zeta Acosta. Another person that really kind of contributed to Hunter S. Thompson's career was Ralph Steadman. Steadman was an English journalist and cartoonist, so he provided a lot of the drawings, a lot of the animation for Hunter's articles and pieces that he submitted for Rolling Stone. And it really gave a strong visual representation. And a lot of times Steadman was in on those misadventures that Hunter was in that story, so he could really add a visual component to Hunter's writings. His next book, Hunter wrote, called Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, which he covered the Richard Nixon's re-election campaign against George McGovern. And it's interesting kind of how Hunter first got interested in politics, at least in a serious way, is in 1969, he ran for sheriff in Colorado, in Aspen, Colorado, and he ran against the incumbent, Carol Whitmire, who was a pretty conservative, law and order kind of guy. He had a crew cut, so Hunter's strategy was to shave his head, literally become completely bald. He said he looked like Uncle Fester from the Addams Family, and he did that so he could refer to Whitmire, the incumbent who had a crew cut, as his long-haired opponent. So he was sort of a zany guy, Hunter, but he did get almost enough votes to beat him, but Whitmire did defeat him, and but that kind of fueled his interest. So he did write the Fear and Loathing on the campaign trail. Now, when he was writing Fear and Loathing campaign trail, Pat Buchanan, a conservative writer who I think at that time was writing for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, even though they were kind of opposite sides of the political spectrum, they did kind of hang out together and party. And Buchanan referred to Hunter S. Thompson's writing as the least factual but most accurate reporting of the Nixon re-election campaign. As far as movies, we see Hunter S. Thompson depicted in two well-known movies. First, Where the Buffalo Roam with Bill Murray, and the second one, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas with Johnny Depp. When Where the Buffalo came out with Bill Murray, I went to see it and I thought, wow, that the character was made up. I didn't believe that this was an actual person, and I thought since Bill Murray played wild and crazy guys from Saturday Night Live through Ghostbusters, that it was some creation created for Bill Murray to be kind of zany. And it wasn't until later that I found out about Hunter S. Thompson, read some of his stuff, and later saw the Johnny Depp movie, where I realized that Bill Murray actually underplayed Hunter S. Thompson. Now, there was some famous stories about how Bill Murray got into the Hunter S. Thompson character. They hung out and engaged in various shenanigans. One reported story was that Hunter tied Bill Murray's leg to a chair and threw him into the swimming pool, and Murray almost drowned. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But obviously they got into a lot of different misadventures, and Bill Murray did end up playing him in Where the Buffalo Roam. Johnny Depp, of course, took over and did a more manic side of Hunter S. Thompson in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and they became friends as well, Hunter S. Thompson and Johnny Depp. And about Hunter's growing up, he grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and his father, who was an insurance executive, died when Hunter was in high school. Hunter was quite a good athlete, but when he got in high school, the two things that consisted of most of his time was juvenile delinquency and his freelance writing. He joined the Athenaeum Literary Society and contributed to that, but he also engaged in juvenile mischief with his gang. They would go to the local convenience store, steal some beers, and then they would go drag racing, and then later they would hit the library to read and study. So you get that strange dichotomy of juvenile delinquency and yet being very interested in reading and writing and various authors. His juvenile delinquency did increase to the point where in his senior year he was arrested for serious theft. Now, mainly he was an accomplice, and the guy that did most of the thievery was the son of the local district attorney. So that student, his father being a prominent attorney in the community, he got off, and Hunter pretty much was the fall guy. He didn't have a father. He, after his father died, the family struggled financially. So Hunter faced either serious jail time or he was told to enlist in the armed forces. So, and unfortunately, he was not allowed to graduate with his high school class. So he did choose the Air Force to avoid jail time. And it was in the Air Force that he started to write for various military publications, and he learned the who, what, where, when, and why, and how of journalism. After he got out of the military, he wrote in various states as a freelancer and stringer, and later got married, and he and his wife moved to Puerto Rico, and they eked out a living. A lot of times his wife Sandy's parents supported Hunter and Sandy, and he did pick up a few jobs here and there. He also attempted to write a novel called The Rum Diaries that was mainly rejected by most publishers. It was later published after Hunter became successful. Hunter and Sandy then moved to California. He became involved in a lot of the peace resistance activities in San Francisco around the mid-60s. Knew Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead and Ken Kesey, who wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And it was later where he had a chance to write an article and later a book on the Hells Angels. Now, he hung out with the Hells Angels for almost a year and rode with them to really kind of soak up their habits, their attitudes, their lifestyles. And this book became an eventual bestseller. And then that allowed Hunter to go from a struggling writer that was living hand to mouth to being able to choose a lot of his Plum magazine writing assignments because of his success with the Hells Angels. Also at that time too, what was happening in the mid-60s in terms of journalism is that there was a shift from the traditional journalism of third person, the who, what, where, when, and why. This is especially true in magazine pieces where you had what was called new journalism or participatory journalism, where the journalist pretty much did everything that their subject did and really kind of soaked up their lifestyle and reported it almost if they were the person themselves. And other writers of the new journalism movement or participatory journalism included Gay Talese and Tom Wolfe. So Hunter S. Thompson also came out of that movement. Of course, he took it one step further with Gonzo Journalism and became quite well known to the readers of Rolling Stone. After the mid-70s, his drug and alcohol use really kind of curtailed his writing, and most of the writing after that became compilations of previous written magazine and newspaper articles. Why was Hunter like? Why did he take so much alcohol and drugs and live that kind of lifestyle? My theory is that, and in fact I've even read some quotes by Hunter saying that his father died before the age of 50. So he felt that he was going to die by 50. Hunter felt that he was going to die by 50, and his philosophy was buy the ticket, take the ride. You know, try everything, live life to its absolute extreme, because especially if you know you're going to live only a short time, you might as well cram as much as you can in that span. The baseball player Mickey Mantle had the same philosophy, and he drank very heavily and caroused, and because his father died quite young, and he felt that the same thing was going to happen to him. So I think Hunter S. Thompson's while living was very much a result of his father dying young, and also when his father died, the family struggled financially, and he saw that his friend who did the thievery get off very easily because his friend's father was the district attorney, and that Hunter really had to take the blame and the hit and the consequences for the robbery. So he realized that life was not fair to everyone, especially in various social economic classes and statuses. So I think he became a person who just decided to live life at full tilt because he was going to die young and life wasn't going to treat him fairly. So anyway, that's my dime store analysis on why his lifestyle. He did die at age 67, and he did commit suicide. He did have a number of physical problems. He said in his note that he didn't think he was going to live past 50, so he lived 17 years past what he thought was going to, that his life was going to give him. So when the note was written, he found himself in a very struggling physical ailments and a number of trying operations that he had to face, so he decided to end his life there. Johnny Depp and a number of other people, John Cusack and I think a few others, Jack Nicholson was there. They shot his ashes out of a cannon, so he did go off in a very dramatic style. I would like to close today with one sample of his writing. This is from his, one other thing I would like to mention before I conclude is that I think Hunter S. Thompson's, one of his greatest achievements was, much like Mark Twain and Ernest Hemingway, he demonstrated making his writing truly an American voice, and to make it distinctive, and he really was successful at doing that. And I'd like to conclude with that voice from his 1959 novel, that later became published called Rum Diaries. Like most others, I was a seeker, a mover, a malcontent, at times a stupid hellraiser. I was never idle long enough to do much thinking, but I felt somehow that some of us were making real progress, that we had taken an honest road, and that the best of us would inevitably make it over the top. At the same time, I shared a dark suspicion that the life we were leading was a lost cause, that we were all actors, kidding ourselves along a senseless odyssey. It was the tension between these two poles, a restless idealism on one hand and a sense of impending doom on the other, that kept me going. Thank you.